Chapter 18. Scott stepped out of the car and stretched his back. Everything he did, from his speech to his posture, came off as scripted, as if he was a talentless actor for hire who couldn't even get a job at a child's birthday party. Everything about him was phony. I felt it from day one, but wouldn't be able to quite put my finger on it until years later. "I need to stretch my legs, Elizabeth. Walk with me," he bade. I had turned 17, and Scott's visits had become more frequent. Twice a week he would drive the 3 hours from New Jersey. The routine was expected of me now, and I had no skill to argue. I followed. We would walk the trail into the forest, the same forest where Joe and I had. We would barely make it to the trees before Scott grabbed me and pushed me to my knees. "All right," he said, and shoved his dick in my mouth. He turned me around and bent me over, shoved me against a tree, or just kissed me with his hard teeth and his cold saliva. I'd close my eyes and brace for the pain that always followed. He'd finish with me, leaving me behind the stench of 6 sacks, and we would return to the house. He'd shake my father's hand with a phony smile, and then we'd leave. We went to dinner and the movies. The car rides were always hell. Within 5 minutes he'd have his dick out and would shove my head into his lap while he drove. If I said no, the reply was always the same. "I can drive back to New Jersey. And if I had to drive back tonight, you know the back pain I have. What I had to do to get here?" Guilt and rejection. He was a piece of work. He'd hike up my skirt and finger me while he fucked my mouth. His nails cut me and I bled. It didn't matter anymore. I always bled. I was finally used to the pain and could block it out. I'd suck his dick and hated every moment. I swallowed anyway. Other cars would drive by. I knew they could see. I knew he'd let them. I knew it got him off. But he accepted me. He would have me. I was worth just $1, after all, if I was worth anything at all. We would arrive at dinner. I always was brought to merlot with filet mignon, or beef Wellington with French onion soup. And afterward, a movie. The movie was another kind of nightmare. He always picked one with graphic sex, and every breast shot, every sex scene I would be expected to perform. He'd drag my hand on his dick, he'd shove my head down, and I would have to suck him right off there in the theater. Every movie, every time. The anxiety, the filth, it was a nightmare without an end. No matter how much I told him no, his argument back was always the same, and I would take it. I would submit. I would comply or be punished. I couldn't risk losing him. No one else would have me. I wasn't worth anything more than that. I shouldn't be so selfish. He always returned me late, dropped me off with the leftover Wellington, cum stains, and more filth than me than a used condom on the streets of New York, and it was exactly what I deserved. "I hate talking about this," I said. William looked up from his notes but said nothing. "It feels normal. It feels indifferent, unimportant. Is this unimportant? I can't tell." William only looked at me. "It bothers me that it doesn't bother me," I said. "It should. Shouldn't it?" When I speak of Joe, I remember the horror, the filth. I can taste the darkness, and a part of me curls up on the floor and cries like a wee babe. I can't stop shivering and sobbing. I think of Scott, and there is nothing there. I feel nothing, just emptiness, where fear, hate, and anger should be. But there is only nothing. I am hollow. I think this is important. I need to share this, but whenever I speak of it, I think, why am I talking about this? It isn't that bad. What am I complaining about? "Am I boring you?" I asked. William shook his head. "Not boring. No, just listening. I remember things. Things I need to say. There were others, insignificant others, whose words stayed with me. I remember them now. He was a 19-year-old senior in the high school, and I was barely 14. He was overweight and reminded me of jelly. He was disgusting and wanted me. He'd raped so many girls, my cousin being one of them. I went to my cousin's house, and she was howling upstairs. I could hear her screams. They carried through the house. "What's wrong with her?" my mom said. "Oh, she was raped," my aunt replied, but the tone in her voice stayed with me. It was like my cousin annoyed her, like my aunt wished for my cousin to shut up and end her senseless wailing. We were raped. We all were. Mostly I remember the screams. That rapist, he had an eye for me. He let me know that. I was beautiful then, so very beautiful. Drop dead fucking gorgeous. That's what Pissant said. That rapist, I knew he wanted me. He described every detail to me, how he would tear me apart and make me bleed, and that I would enjoy it. Every day he told me everything he wanted to do to me. He described what he would do, how he would rape me, and then I'd go home and dream of those things. I felt him rip my body apart as if I lived inside one of Dali's paintings, and my body was cloven in two. There were pieces of me everywhere. In school, I took paths to my classes to ensure I didn't run into him. He never touched me, but the visions he put in my head, the fear, he evokes far more horror from me than Scott. Maybe I was too numb to the nightmare to feel any of it or care when Scott came along. I remember the feeling I lived with for years, that horrible, hellish feeling. It started when the rape threats, the groping, and the molestation started. My beauty developed well into my teens. Males grabbed every chance they got or slid graphic suggestions into conversations. They all made it clear what they wanted with me, what they would do to me. But that feeling, nothing could shake that feeling. It felt like I was standing naked in front of everyone all the time, like I was bound to a wall, my legs forced apart with chains, my arms stretched out, exposing my chest, my heart. I was vulnerable, filthy, and exposed. They could see me. Everyone could see my secrets if only they looked at me. I wished to be invisible. I wanted to curl up in a corner, tucked away in the dark, and die. At home, I tried. I'd wrap myself in a blanket and rock myself in the corner, my legs pulled into my chest, and I waited for the feeling to end. I waited and wished for my last breath. No matter how many clothes I wore or blankets I buried myself under, I was still naked for all the world to see. It would take hours to leave, sometimes the day. It came whenever and was unpredictable. And I lived with that feeling every day of my life from 12 to 20. To this day, I still don't know what it was, why it came, or why it left me at all. Sean still beat me, but he saw the fight in me, the cold hate I carried with me. I was stronger too and had learned how to fight. I think he knew that. We still had the occasional battle that resulted in his fist landing a hit. I took it, but mostly he resorted to threats. The tension was high, forever high and constant. I felt like I was living in an unmapped minefield. I was smarter about things too. My door stayed locked at all times. I never opened that door. "Don't open the door," Angel said. "Not for anyone." I didn't leave my room for anything. I didn't eat. I feared sleep and learned how to live with only a few hours. My cat stayed in my room with me. They never left. I still saw Eric in Ireland. Oh, and Poe. Those years I found Poe. If ever my soul had a sound, it would be Puccini. But my heart bled the words of Poe. His words fell off the pages like streaks of blood and black that mirrored my darkest desires. His words reflected my nightmare, my hell, my heart. To open and read the words of Poe was to find me. There was a shadow growing within, a shadow that writhed like death, cold and distant, a kind of wraith-like beauty only found in the macabre. Skeletal dances dressed in crimson, cold roses, dead forests littered in winter's chill, and ghosts of girls in gossamer gowns who saw the beauty despite the dreams of death and decay and bodies buried beneath festering filth. A cold beauty, the kind only which death brings. I read the words of Lenore. I mastered his Annabelle. I pored over the prose of his Raven. I reveled in his Nevermore. His words did so much to define the darkness in me. In my 18th summer, a beam of light opened up, and my beloved friend was born. Of all my friends, no one would come to mean more to me than Tribble. She arrived a ball of proof on the 13th day of July in 1998. Her mews were soft and sweet. Her fur was long and softer than silk, and so black almost to be tinged with shades of midnight. Her purr came easily. That cat could walk into a room, see me, and purr. But above all else, from the moment she was born, there was never a day that she did not come running at the sound of my cries. And she would come to me and purr as I cried into her fur every day of her life, right up until the day she died. Tribble was the first to ever love me in this vile world, the first to ever comfort me of her own will. My half-brother caught on quickly to my fond affections for Tribble. In no time she bore the brunt of his abuse. Of all my cats, she was hit the most, bitten the most, and beaten the most. The thing with Tribble was this: she never bore claws, hissed, or fought back. Tribble was too gentle, too good, too sweet to ever do anything but love, and she lived to love me. The least I could do was protect her. The emotional attachment I developed from her was instant and kept me grounded. In this world, for the next 17 years, right up until her dying day, when Tribble arrived, Eric went away. I stopped slipping into the other realms. With Tribble, I needed nothing. Tribble, William said. Like Troubles with Tribbles from Star Trek. I grinned. The very same. Tribble looked like a Tribble, cooed like a Tribble. She even screamed like a Tribble when Sean bit her soft little ears. Such beautiful ears. Oh, and her tail was like a plume of glorious black silk. She had so much fuzz that topher flowed from between each toe. Elena, Hosea, and I had somehow collected an entourage of friends. Together we formed a group of bohemians. There were 8 of us. We were writers, artists, painters, poets, musicians, and philosophers. Every day for 2 years, from 11th to 12th grade, the 8 of us would gather in the art room for 3 hours and engage in formal argument, much like Degas, Monet, and Renoir in Paris. We would debate, ponder, and explore the ins and outs of our existence. We took on the man and did our best to wreak havoc among the mundane, and Hosea and I were their leader. We led the group across the roof of the school. I posed for a still life while drawing my own still life and petitioned to be the art subject for multiple projects. Wrap me, I implored my teacher. You say we have to wrap something in fabric and twine, then draw it? Me! I choose me! Wrap me! I was more than eager to volunteer. Yes! Let's wrap Elizabeth! Wrap Elizabeth! I shouted. I'm very good at rallying up the masses. Wrap me! I learned to laugh in that room. I learned to rise above my nightmare and see the good. I learned to forget my grief and smile. I learned to love. I clung to those 8 so desperately. And at home, I clung to Tribble. Hosea had drawn a still life entitled The Death of the Tribble. I had no idea what a Tribble was, but the Bohemian imbroglio was more than eager to teach me. When Tribble was born, I named her after Hosea's still life. For those 2 brief years, that collection of artists, that wonderful group of people, planted a light of hope inside of me. They nourished it and stoked to life, and by our senior year, it had grown into a voracious flame.